of the screen. And so if people want to get involved, you can ask a question there. And some of our behind the scenes folk will flag up anything to me as might be appropriate through the course of the evening. The way that the evening is going to run is we will begin after my brief introduction will be to have each of the candidates in turn as I can see them on my screen, which may be different from yours, because if you've used Zoom at all over the last year or so, you'll realise that it always looks slightly different for each person. We will take a 2-minute introduction where each candidate is able to introduce themselves, and this event has been organised by Friends of the Earth, and all the candidates were asked within their invite to sign up to a pledge and whether they would. So we'll ask them in that initial 2 minutes whether they're going to take the Friends of the Earth pledge, or they can make comment on it. We will then move to questions that have come in from you, and we will then and we're going to give each candidate 1 minute in turn to answer those questions, because we want to keep things moving quickly. For those who need it, I need to mention that you can press a button on Zoom that is for live transcript, which may on your screen be live transcript or CC, which gives you subtitles, I believe, and hopefully that functionality will work for you. So if you need to be able to read what's going on, you can do so. It's also being recorded. Only the people that are on the screen, the panelists and myself as chair, are being recorded. So if you are in the audience, we can't see you, and so you're not being recorded. But that's just for your information, and that recording will be available in the next few days from the Friends of the Earth website, and that will be, I believe, through both the Hillingdon Friends of the Earth and Ealing Friends of the Earth. But we're hoping that a link might get sent out to you, so you'll be able to find that when it's available. And I think that that's all of those sorts of things. I should say that my name is Rich Blakelob. I'm the pastor of Useley Baptist Church, and I've been invited to chair this evening, having chaired a number of hustings over the last few years. But I've not actually been part of the organisation of this event, and so it's all kind of as new to me as it is to you, and I hope to remain impartial throughout. And so I'm going to pass over to the candidates. As I said, we're going to go through them as the order they are on my screen. We're going to begin in a moment with Hussein, giving 2 minutes to introduce himself and his party politics and policies. We've then got Marine, Onkar, Gregory and Anthony. And so I am going to, I'm going to mute myself. And I don't know if other candidates want to mute themselves until it's their turn to talk. But Hussein, I'm hitting the timer for your 2 minutes and I will hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for all the great work Friends of the Earth do. On the pledge, yes, I've already taken it. Very happy to do so. So I'm Hussein Khan, Liberal Democrat candidate. The Liberal Democrats' plan to take London forward has a clear focus on 3 basic needs for London: homes, jobs and clean air. There is a climate emergency, and if we don't act now, the consequences for the next generation is going to be catastrophic. The time is now for big ideas and urgent action. COVID-19 isn't the only silent killer on the streets of London. We must deal with the impact of polluted air. For a start, we've got to back the future of travel and ditch our polluting past. That means cancelling Labour's polluting £2 billion Silvertown Tunnel, an expensive polluting new road project that will drive a hole through our zero carbon ambitions and take funds away from public transport projects we need. The priority is greening our bus fleet, extending our tube lines, and truly reducing congestion in the capital. We don't need a new road, we need a new system. That is a fairer, pay-as-you-go system that will replace our complex web of flat rate and outdated road charges. It'll help to fix TfL's funding crisis and encourage Londoners to make greener choices. This also have to make options attractive. Our vision for London is to have more flexible working, fewer trips, and more time spent in local areas. If you're traveling by foot or bike, it's more simple if you don't have to go far. We want to invest in infrastructure to make it safer and more enjoyable, as well as to promote behavioral change. That's why we're going to have the cycle hire scheme to be free on Sundays. So it's not just about transport. We also want to rewild London, from planting more trees to connecting up green walkways and establishing 10 new parks. We want to green every roof in the capital. We're proud of our environmental background, from protecting green spaces in our local communities to leading renewable revolution. I look forward to discussing these with you further.
Thank you, Hussein. That was pretty well timed. Congratulations, good start. And we're going to move straight over to Maureen.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm Maureen Vandergeer and I'm the candidate for the Green Party. And I've been very, very nervous about this hustings because this is, of course, the hustings that I'm most passionate about. And I just feel that the pressure is on. Sometimes when you know so much about something, you want to say too much and you end up saying nothing. So I'm going to try and be very careful. Luckily, well, not luckily, but this afternoon, I had yet another run-in with TfL about them poisoning at the back of my house with their weed killer. And it gave me sort of renewed resolve to fight the fight for nature, because that is what the Green Party wants to do. We are in a climate and ecological emergency. It is here. There's no denying it. We're already seeing the impact. We're set to see the hottest summer yet. What are we going to do about it? And the sad thing about this is that this is the time when we need to be united. We need to work on this together. And instead, what we're seeing is major polarization, and it's absolutely heartbreaking, whether it's about cycle lanes, whether it's about HS2, whether it's about LTNs. There is no middle ground. People are screaming and shouting at each other, and that has to stop, and it has to stop now. We must reduce our carbon emissions. We must cut our carbon emissions. We must stop air pollution. And there is going to be compromise for everybody. That is the harsh reality. But in exchange for that, we get to live and we get to breathe clean air and we don't destroy our planet. So I think these are sacrifices worth making, but we have to make sure that they are socially just, that not just the lucky few get to breathe clean air and the rest breathes in more fumes. So we need to figure out how we're going to do this in a way that is fair for everyone and not just for a few. So we have
you've had 2 minutes.
Oh, sorry. Okay, that's it.
I'm sure there will be time to share more throughout the evening, but it gives you a bit of an idea as to how quickly that 2 minutes goes. And when we give you 1 minute for the questions, you'll be like, I'm going to hand over to Onkar now. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Onkar Sahota. I'm the candidate for the Labour Party. I'm a local GP in Ealing and have been a member for the Ealing and Hillingdon constituency since 2012. I've worked with Sadiq Khan, who's standing again as the mayor. And of course, Sadiq is determined to make London even a better city than it was before the pandemic, to make sure that we have a city which has a recovery and a greener city. And the two are not inconsistent, or mutually exclusive. So we can have a greener city and a more better economy, and that's what we want to do. It was Sadiq Khan who has improved the air quality in central London by 1/3. It is Sadiq Khan who was the first to declare that London is in a climate emergency, and also has plans to deliver a zero carbon deficit by the year 2030. So we are ambitious. We want to have a greener city. And air quality is very, very important. And I know this as a doctor, that the children's lungs are being damaged by poor air quality. Asthma diseases going up, as has the impact upon cardiovascular disease and renal disease. So I think that we're all fighting on the green agenda, but the question is who can deliver it and who has the resources and the will to do so. And I think our track record speaks for that. And I look forward to having a further discussion with you. In terms of the pledge to the Friends of the Earth pledge, I'm happy to sign that pledge. Yeah.
Thank you, Onka. I'm now moving over to Gregory. And so, Gregory, great, you're off mute and over to you. 2 minutes.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Thank you all very much for inviting me. Just a brief bit about me. I'm Greg Stafford. I'm the Conservative candidate in this election. I've been a Conservative councillor in Ealing since 2007. I've lived in Ealing all my life, and now I'm raising my family here. I've got 2 young girls, both under 5. So the environment is even more important to me now than perhaps it was 5 years ago. I work in the NHS, so I understand the real health impacts that poor environmental qualities have on people's real lives. And I think, I'm a champion of the environment. And how could anybody who is a lifelong resident in our bit of Ealing and Hillingdon not be a champion for the environment, given the great open spaces that we have, the fantastic tree-lined streets? We have to be. But it's under threat. And I think most especially from overdevelopment and tower blocks forced on us by the Mayor of London's targets, and indeed his removal of the protection of back gardens. I think this is a real problem. So what can a London Assembly member really do about this? Well, a London Assembly member, whatever they might tell you this evening, doesn't have any direct power. The purpose of a London Assembly member is to hold the Mayor to account, to question his policies and to challenge the negative effects caused by them, and to be a champion of Ealing and Hillingdon. And that's why I'm concerned that our current GLA member has asked no questions on the environmental impact of HS2 in the last 5 years. He's asked no questions on Warren Farm. He's asked no questions on the environmental impact of Heathrow in the last 4 years. No questions in the last 5 years on pollution from the Southall Gasworks site. No questions on problems with the Piccadilly and Metropolitan lines. No questions on Crossrail delays. So this is why I'm standing. Because we need in Ealing and Hillingdon a champion for the environment, for transport, for health, and for the economy. And I will promise you this, that I will hold whatever the colour of the Mayor is in terms of their political colour, whether they be red, blue, or green, I will be that champion. Thank you.
Thank you, Gregory. And last but not least, I hand over to Anthony.
Thanks very much, Rich, and also, thanks for being part of probably the most important debate that we could possibly have. Just to go back, I'm Anthony Goodwin. I'm the Reform UK candidate for Ealing and Hillingdon, and get rid of that. So, the reason I'm involved is getting involved in politics now is because I've got a business in Ealing, in Uxbridge actually. The whole structure of London and the way that we've implemented the ULETH schemes and the low traffic neighbourhoods and the cycle lanes has been really ill considered and has blighted people's lives, and they've done it under the cover of COVID, so that a lot of us didn't even know what was going on or what was happening. There's been very little consultation, and for the Mayor of London to stand again based on his actions in trying to reduce emissions, it's been chaotic, and we've driven. I'm a cyclist. I'm an environmentalist. Who wouldn't be? I've got children. This is such an important issue, probably the most important issue this century, and to have an administration, have a mayoral office, and local councils fighting each other, and doing and implementing cycle lanes and low traffic neighbourhoods and ultra low emission zones that simply don't work, has gotten me involved in politics. You probably realise from what I'm saying is that I don't have these prepared statements and all this other in-depth knowledge. But what I do have is an absolute passion, desire to make things better for the environment and for all of our constituents.
Thank you, Anthony, and thank you to all of you for your opening statements. I noticed some of you mentioned the pledge. Some of you, someone's put a comment saying, "Oh, I did sign the pledge, but I forgot to mention it." So if you didn't mention it out loud and you'd like to make sure people know that you have or haven't signed up to the pledge, then you can do so. But I'm going to move on.
Rich, could you actually read that out, because I've had a problem with my email. I've just changed my devices, so
yeah, I can.
Let me pledge it live.
Okay, that's fine. I think probably Maureen will want to do it live as well.
I know, I've already signed it ages ago. Yeah.
There you go. I knew you'd commented. You'd commented in one of the on the side there. The pledge is: if I'm elected to the London Assembly, I will make the climate crisis a top priority in considering all the Mayor of London's decisions and push the Mayor for tougher action on climate, as illustrated in Friends of the Earth's Climate Action Plan for London.
I will certainly hold the Mayor to account on the actions contained in that statement.
Thank you. And I'm just looking around. I think others said that they were supporting it or otherwise. And I think, did all of you, I lost track, but I think most of you.
I have to say I didn't say it because like Anthony, I couldn't actually find what I could read that top bit, which I was perfectly happy to sign up with, but I couldn't find anywhere what those London pledges, what that action plan was. So if someone can send that to me in the next hour and a half, I'm happy to quickly scan it, and I'm sure I will sign up to it. But I would like to read it at least briefly before I can pledge to it.
That seems very reasonable, and I'll be impressed if you can manage to scan it in the next hour and a half, as well as answering questions. So there we go. Right, we're going to take the first question, or the first questions. They are on the theme of Heathrow, and I've got a couple of. Well, I've got one that's a comment as I read it, and one question, and then there's another question that actually came in on the Q&A function, basically asking the same thing. And so the comment is, I've been fighting, and this is from Armil. Apologies if I say anyone's name wrong. I'm only going to use first names because of GDPR. But Armil said, I've been fighting Heathrow Airport expansion for 28 years. What do candidates think of the future of Heathrow Airport? That's why I thought it was a comment, because I was missing the question mark there. What do candidates think of the future of Heathrow Airport? Living in Harmondsworth, I'm unable to bury my husband in the village due to the constant pressure of Heathrow to destroy our communities, even during the pandemic. And then secondly, from Robert, we have, do you oppose Heathrow expansion? And what will you do as our local GLA candidate to stop the expansion happening if elected? So I am going first of all to you, Maureen, and you have 1 minute to let us know your answer to those questions. Thank you.
Yes, so the Green Party's categorically against any airport expansion. That includes, of course, Heathrow. The one thing that we do need to consider is that, of course, lots of jobs do rely on Heathrow as an employer. So we need to make sure that we have a fair and just transition. What are those people going to do? How do we support them? So we need to really carefully think about retraining, providing green jobs that they can go to, so that we don't punish them for having jobs that are very carbon intensive. But yes, Heathrow cannot be expanded. In fact, we need to start seeing fewer flights in the air. We fully support a frequent flyer levy. We need to start looking at the way we travel differently. Meetings can be done over Zoom, as we have seen. Journeys can be made by train. So there's no need to fly as much as we used to anymore. And also, it's a very small percentage of people who do fly so much. So they create so much air pollution and so much emissions.
You've had 1 minute.
That lots of people aren't responsible for. So yes. no expansion.
Thank you. And going then on to Onka, same question.
Great. Before I answer the question briefly, I have asked questions on other issues, and the way the London Assembly works, right, is that you ask questions from a group, and every Assembly member doesn't need to ask every single question. We do know the answer to give another question. So the allegation that I haven't asked questions is totally unfair. Coming to Heathrow, the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, opposed the expansion of Heathrow, joined the other boroughs to make sure that Heathrow doesn't expand it. But also, let me tell you, the MP for Uxbridge and Ruislip, the Prime Minister of this country, said he will lie if a third run was built there, he will lie on the tarmac. But you know when the vote took place in the House of Commons where he was? On a day trip to Afghanistan. He arranged to go to Afghanistan so he wouldn't have to vote down the government motion. So this party, the Tory party, say one thing and does something else. But we want Heathrow to survive so the jobs are maintained, but we don't want expansion of Heathrow. So that's where we stand. No expansion, not a bigger Heathrow, but a better Heathrow, more efficient Heathrow.
Thank you, Onka. Same question to you, Gregory.
Hi there. Well, I completely agree actually with the opposition that we've heard so far. We definitely don't want to see a third runway or any further expansion at Heathrow. And Emil, your question and your comment about your husband being able to bury him is just heartrending. I'm going to be in Harmondsworth tomorrow at around 4 o'clock. Happy to talk to you if you're there. And we do drop your details in the chat, and I'll get in contact with you. But I will be in Harmondsworth at 4 o'clock. How can we stop it as a GLA member? Well, as I've said, GLA members have no specific direct power, but what we can do is get the Mayor of London to make it as difficult as possible for Heathrow to expand. And one of the ways we can do that is by making sure the Mayor gives no money, no TfL money that would go to Heathrow. So to make a third runway and an extra terminal work at Heathrow, there's going to have to be transport tube links. If the Mayor says there's no money going for that, then he'll find it impossible to expand Heathrow. And that's what the Mayor, that's what I'll be pushing, whoever the Mayor is, to do, to make sure there's no TfL money going to Heathrow.
Thank you, Gregory. Anthony, over to you.
Thanks. Yeah, another good question. I'd liken it to the back in the 1980s when Margaret Thatcher closed the coal mines. You know, it was a terrible thing for the local community for them to do at the time. But was it the right thing to do today? It seems like it was. And I'm with Marianne when she talks about the jobs that are and the economy which is supported by Heathrow. And we have to look very carefully at that kind of ramification on people's lives. You know, just like the whole low traffic and neighbourhood schemes have been implemented badly. We've got to be very careful that we don't destroy people's lives by curtailing activities which nobody else is curtailing. And by the way,
you've had a minute.
Just very quickly, by doing all this on Zoom, hopefully we won't be travelling by air as much anyway.
Thank you, Anthony. And Hussein.
Hi. The Liberal Democrats are completely against any kind of airport expansion, including Heathrow as well, just like the others. We think Heathrow has the potential to reform itself, basically get rid of these kind of domestic flights, and we need a better rail network. We don't want to have flights all the time. People are talking about the economic angle. Yes, that is very important. It has to be looked at, but there are other considerations as well, not just about the pollution it causes, but also the night flights. What's happening, there's been a consultation just recently. Caroline Pidgeon, the Liberal Democrat Assembly members, put forward accounts of locals who are really affected by night flights, and it's disappointing that they're trying to continue these. There's increasing scientific evidence about the serious negative health impacts of that from aircraft noise, and that has an economic consequence as well.
Thank you, Hussein. There you go. You've had your first question. You've all got a sense of how long a minute is, or how short a minute suddenly feels. We are moving on. I'm trying to keep up. There's some questions coming in on the Q&A. For everyone who's watching, the pledge has been posted now to the chat for everyone, and the longer document for download has been posted to the panelists, and it might be in the Q&A as well for people to see. So if people want to get a sense of what is this Friends of the Earth pledge that's been talked about, because the event was organised by Friends of the Earth, they got to ask if candidates would do this pledge, and so that's fair play to them. But you can now also read it, check it out, and so on and so forth. The second question, or second kind of theme of questions, are general environmental questions, or on general environment. So I will go through these, and I'm just seeing if we can summarize them in any way, but I don't want to take too much away, and you can pick from the bits that are in each of these. Lucas asks, what changes can we expect to see in the near future? There you go, short and sharp, and you leave it quite open there for you to tell us. Rebecca, what plans are in place to alleviate the impact of M4 widening, HS2 and increased congestion in the borough? If you win the position as Ealing's London Mayor, Ealing's London Assembly representative, of course it's Ealing and Hillingdon, what environmental goals will you set to achieve? Do you have any plans to drive a better recycling approach for Ealing? And I'm going to add in Hillingdon as well, because it's across the two boroughs, in terms of making it more accessible and easier for residents to recycle. What about reducing air pollution and carbon footprint in the borough? Do you have plans to push for better cycle paths and secure bike racks? That was from Alexandra. From John, we've got, how do you plan to reduce air pollution in London on safe levels, and by what date would you aim to achieve this? And then from Christine, people have been encouraged to buy electric cars, but need to charge them overnight. Is likely to lead to more and more front gardens being turned into car parks. Our research has shown that this usually means a total pave-over. Will you support bringing in a London-wide condition that applications for pavement crossovers can only be approved if the front garden hard surfacing is minimum necessary for the cars to park, and the remainder devoted to green services, e.g. low growing, low maintenance plants? I hope that you managed to take all of that in, but there was quite a lot there on general environment, as it was, sorry, they were quite put together, but there's a lot to cover, and you've got a minute, so rather you than me. But no pressure. Do you want a minute and a half for this one? That seemed like a lot, didn't it? I'll give you a minute and we'll see where we get to. I'm feeling generous at the moment, but Maureen, over to you.
Am I starting again?
Oh, sorry, no, you're not. I'm happy to.
No,
it should be Onka to start. Thank you for that. You're last on this round. It's Onka to start. Thank you. Great. Thanks, Onka.
Great, thanks, Rick. Look, first of all, the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, declared that we had a climate emergency. We've improved the air quality in central London by 1/3, and that's why we're expanding the ULEZ to the North Circular and the South Circular. We're committed and have a plan ready to deliver London being a zero carbon city by 2030, faster than any comparable city in the world. We've developed that scheme already, and this is much more ambitious than even the Paris Agreement, which was keeping rising temperature to 1.5. So we are committed to making a great investment of £53 million in to create greener jobs and make sure that business and charities are funded to scrap their diesels, their old vehicles. And we are committed to making sure that air quality continues to be improved, and I think we've shown by our efforts, right, that we've delivered on what we promised.
Thank you, Onka. I'm impressed that you managed to go for a minute then, and I was feeling generous earlier. Gregory, we're moving to you on those general environment questions.
Yeah, well, I think the key things for me is that often And we've certainly seen it in Ealing over the last 6 to 9 months. Often grand schemes are put into place without really any thought, and they often have perverse consequences. So what I would like to do is ensure that the mayor is bringing forward policies that actually have a positive impact on our 2 boroughs. And I think some of the ways we can do that is look at, for example, where are the most polluting vehicles in the boroughs at the moment? Well, they are generally black cabs. They are, because they're mostly diesel, and so are bus fleet, again, because they're mostly diesel. So we've got a pledge to ensure that all of the bus fleet in the whole of London, that's about 10,000 buses, are made fully electric by the end of the term. And there are about 400 buses at the moment which are electric. So it's a massive pledge, but I think it's absolutely doable. Second of all, we need to encourage black cab drivers to move over to electric. And again, we would have an incentive scheme to do that. But I think going back to the point where someone mentioned about the economy as well, I think around Heathrow, I think there's a real opportunity to create green jobs.
You've had a minute.
Right, I think there's a real opportunity to create green jobs, and I think we could create about 11,000 of those in the term, these 3 years that we've got. And I'll be pushing whoever is mayor to ensure that we do invest in green jobs so that we can grow the green job economy in London and make it the green job capital of the world.
Thank you, Gregory. I'm heading over to you now, Anthony.
Okay, well, I'll concentrate on the electric car situation because I've got one, and I was persuaded to get one by my kids, and then drivers have been attacked in London by the regulations introduced by the mayor, which have been absolutely awful, and so I'm sorry to hear that people are paving over their gardens to be able to charge their cars. That is an unforeseen consequence, an unintended consequence. But I have seen also the conversion of slower charging electric points in street lighting capabilities. And also I've noticed in my office in Uxbridge, 2 or 3 other fast charging points being put in. And this to me is really exciting. I've done the research that the batteries on the cars are a problem, but they're not as much of a problem as diesel are a problem. And I think we should all be encouraged to and incentivized to drive electric.
Thank you, Anthony. Over to you, Hussein.
Wow, a lot of questions to answer. But so, for example, Louisa Porritt, who's running for mayor, she's saying that the year where the UK hosts COP26 will lead the world on greening public transport. We want to have a full rollout of zero-emission buses by 2030, not as planned at 2037. We want to invest in green transport technology, innovation, experimentation. That's where we have to spend money, not on polluting new roadways such as Silvertown. So we want to reinvest that money, and the climate crisis and technology is hand in hand. That's what we have to use, and smart road pricing in order to do this. So get rid of polluting cars on the roads and make it better for cyclists. So for example, in Ealing, the Liberal Democrat councillors, they've heavily pushed cycling schemes and docks for cycles around the Broadway. So there's massive things that we can talk about for a lot longer than a minute, which I've had. I'm guessing.
Thanks, Hussein. And over to you, Maureen.
Oh God, this is really hard. Okay, I'm going to give it a go. First of all, I'm just going to beat my own drum a little bit. The climate emergency declared by Sadiq Khan was proposed by Caroline Russell, who's one of our Assembly members. So, and also the proposal to change the targets from 2050 to 2030 was also pushed for by Sean Berry and Caroline Russell. So, yay. So it does show that even though there may be limited power to Assembly members, we can do a lot as Assembly members, so that's important to remember. Yes, what are we expecting? We're going to make sure that all GLA investment, controlled investment, divests from fossil fuel. green jobs, including retrofitting, renewables, greening our boroughs. There's going to be so much work to do. There's going to be loads of jobs. So that's great. Obviously, cycle paths need to be implemented. They need to be connected up, not just a random cycle path here that doesn't lead anywhere, but that can actually get you to the places you need to be. Electric cars, I'm sorry to say, are not the solution. We just need to get people out of cars. Electric cars are better, but they're not the solution. So yeah, and all decisions made should have a climate and environmental impact assessment coming out of City Hall.
Thank you, Maureen. Seeing various comments coming in, but you're doing great in terms of keeping focused on the time. The next series of questions, there's going to be crossover because this is about traffic that's come up, so there's various things about emissions, air pollution, and so on and so forth. But I will just give you the series of questions that came up that were around traffic. But we've got Kate, who asked, what measures would you introduce to address carbon emissions and air pollution from traffic? Donald, the International Energy Agency says that SUVs, 4x4s, are the second largest cause of the global rise in carbon dioxide emissions over the past decade, eclipsing all shipping, aviation, heavy industry and trucks. What will you do to restrict or ban these vehicles that are unnecessary in London and so damaging for the environment? What will you do, Emily asked, what will you do to reduce air pollution and cycling? Richard asks, and it's not me, do all candidates agree that too many short journeys are made by car? And if so, what are the preferred method for moving London toward active travel? So you've got in there around air pollution, emissions, reduction of SUVs, and better cycling provisions. And we begin this round with Gregory. Thank you, Gregory.
Thanks. Again, it was quite a lot of questions there. I think for me, the removal of carbon emissions has got to be, for me, the two priorities really is how do we get it from traffic? And I think the bus, we're getting all the bus fleet to be electric by the end of the term, I think is that will make a massive difference. And I think it will also encourage people to use the buses more because they'll be cleaner and newer. Second of all, I think we often don't think about the building. We're looking across Ealing and Hillingdon to putting up over 100 buildings, over 20 stories, all made of concrete, massive carbon emissions, very, very energy heavy. And I think we need to go back to thinking about building low-rise family homes, which will have a positive impact on families because that's where they want to live rather than rabbit hutches in the sky, but also will have an environmental impact. And if I've got enough time, I'll just say one other thing. It's very easy to sit on these calls and just agree with everything, but I'm going to disagree here. You know, I'm a believer in freedom and liberty, and I would never ban anybody from using their vehicles. I don't think we should ban people. That does not solve the problem. But what we should be doing is making it as easy as possible for people to use other forms of transport. And I'll finish on saying cycle lanes. So many cycle lanes seem to go nowhere, including the one on the Chiswick High Road. It starts, goes along the High Road and stops. We need to have proper joined up cycle lanes so that people get into cycling. Thank you.
Thank you, Gregory. Anthony.
I've got so engrossed in Gregory's answer on the cycle lanes, I've forgotten what the original question was.
Essentially, the questions came down to reducing air pollution, the restriction or banning of SUVs, and improving opportunities for cycling. I think that's my summary.
Again, I thank you very much. You know, I think that all of the whole process has been managed so badly by this administration that we need to consult with the people in the boroughs, in the constituencies throughout London, and work on this whole problem with cycle lanes. I'm a cyclist, I'm a walker, You know, I've got a Fitbit. I try and do my bit. But the problem that we've got is that people think it's a very good idea to introduce low traffic neighbourhoods, to introduce cycle lanes, and completely disregard the needs of people in Ealing, in Hillingdon, in all the other London boroughs. And so we've got to come back to the table with them and decide how we're going to implement this and do it properly, and not have cycle lanes starting and finishing nowhere. And work on, and I have to agree with Gregory, we're not going to ban cars.
You've had a minute.
Electric vehicles are a way forward, and I think we should incentivize people for being low carbon emission champions.
Thank you. Hussein.
Hi. So we want to invest in clean, green public transport. That's essential. So about cycling, every Sunday, we want to have the cycle scheme to be free, the Santander cycle scheme. We want a biggest extension of the cycle hire scheme as well. We want to double expenditure on the cycle infrastructure by 2024. We want to create a green walking network to encourage people to get out there and really be active. With the bus fleet, as I've mentioned, we want to retrofit buses and have a fast track the greening of the whole fleet to ensure buses are electric or hydrogen by 2028. We'll have the pricing systems I mentioned, instead of having all these kind of ad hoc prices that happen. We want to charge polluting vehicles, but after having an inclusive public consultation, and set a fair pricing scheme and decide on the exemptions and discounts for people who need them, such as people with special needs and volunteering.
You've had a minute.
So those are the things that we'll do. There's plenty more as well.
Thank you. And Maureen.
Yeah, so we're in a climate and ecological emergency. I can't stress it enough. The lives we lived before are over, they are gone, and it's going to be tough for everybody, and it's going to mean giving stuff up. But how are we going to build around that and work with it? Cars are going to have to be on their way out, and SUVs in London are unacceptable. You know, we've got, where I live, people are driving Land Rovers and other 4x4 vehicles. It's unacceptable. And they all have children, so it's madness. So they need to be cut. The way that we would do it is we would similar to my Lib Dem colleague, we would have a smart pricing system so that you pay for what you're driving. So the less you drive, the less you pay. So that will incentivize people to leave the car at home. Also, if you need to drive to your shop, then that's not your local shop. So we need to address that as well. You should be able to walk to your shop, to your local shops.
Have 1 minute.
We want, okay. This is really hard.
It is. It is. There is. I'm slightly lenient. If you take an extra 10 seconds or so, I'm not going to like kick you off. I'm going to let you finish your sentence. I try and give you that time that you go. You've had a minute, just so you're aware. Our next questions, you'll be pleased, are much more focused. This is on step.
Do I have a chance?
You do, Anka. Apologies. Apologies for that, Anka. I ticked the box to say where I'd started and then completely mislooked as I got distracted by another screen, because there's too many things going on with questions coming in. So Anka, over to you. You've got a minute.
Thank you. Look, I think we agreed that we need to have a modal shift in our way we use transport. That means that we need to get people out of the cars, getting more walking and more onto cycling. That means making sure that our streets are safer. You know, it's more dangerous in this country to be a pedestrian than to be a cyclist. And we need to make sure that we use our streets more safely, and we encourage that. And that also means about winning the hearts and minds of people. It's no point just making legislation, but we need to make sure that we educate people, we educate on the important things. What's important about change, right, is to reduce the resistance to change. And I think all this method which we talked about, other speakers talked about, is that we need to do it. And this mayor has actually done things right to improve things. And I also think that, for example, his scheme on street space, he's putting on more 400 meters from the schools, no idling there, making sure that we are encouraging people to move away from diesel to other modes of transport. So I think we are working on that, but we need to win the hearts and minds of people, and also make sure that people become less resistant to change. And that's the challenge for us, and we need to lead from the front. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next question, as I said, is more concise. It's about step-free access, and we have a couple of people, Conrad and Deborah. They've asked about different stations, but essentially saying people want to travel in most environmentally friendly way possible. Trains are one of those options, and yet Ruislip tube station doesn't yet have step-free access, and the same for Hillingdon station. So the question is, will you commit to doing everything within your power to ensure these access improvements take place? And we begin with Anthony.
That is a very concise and very easy question to answer. So unlike many political heavyweights, I'm just going to give a very simple answer. We'll do everything we possibly can to achieve that.
Excellent. I should probably add, and any other station that might
exactly. Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
that you know,
I'm just.
I was going to say, if Ruislip is the problem, the fact of the matter is that it should be everywhere. Yeah. Everywhere should have that step-free access. It did. You know, it's the 21st century. What's going on?
Yeah. Thank you, Anthony. That was nice and easy. Hussein, over to you.
Hi. So we need to make access, make it easier for Londoners to get to travel with green options. The current mayor, he's been really slow on step-free access. It's been appallingly bad. There's no plans for step-free schemes beyond the next year. The Lib Dems are committed to making at least another 15 stations step-free by 2024. And also, we want to ensure that all platforms have tactile paving installed as well. So those are the aspects. So going locally, you've mentioned a couple, Ruislip, Hillingdon. We've also got on our radar places like Hanger Lane, Northolt. We've had a look and tried to find out different places, Northfields, North Ealing, Perivale, Park Royal. There's plenty out there that we can really focus on within Hillingdon and Ealing. So yes, very much so. We have to make public transport accessible for all.
Thank you. Maureen.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a no-brainer. It needs to happen, and needs to happen as soon as possible. Not just in terms of mobile step-free access, mobility issues, but also in terms of people who are blind or partially sighted. There's lots of really clever ways nowadays that we can help them navigate public transport. Buses, we want to be able to create enough space that people in wheelchairs can sit next to each other so that they can travel together. There's loads of things that we can do. You know, bus stops need to be more accessible, and trains as well. And so far the excuse has been that there's no money, but this is why we think that things like smart road pricing and things like that, they will provide an income to be able to do these sorts of things and provide step-free access, not just in the stations mentioned, but everywhere. There's so many stations that desperately need this, and yeah, that is one of the top priorities.
Thank you, Maureen. Onka.
Hi, look, we all agree that everyone should have access to all the transport system, and step-free access to all stations is important. Of course, there are some stations which can't be made there because of technological challenges, because these are Victorian stations, something come, but the ones that luckily in Ealing and Hillingdon can be done, and Ruislip was up for to become step-free. But of course, funding is important. The reason we had to pull back is because of the TfL funding, and I hope that we'll have an opportunity of discussing the TfL funding and how this government has punished the Londoners in their settlement. But I am committed to it and have done everything within my power to do so. And the mayor is also committed to it also. But let me just also come back to some reality check. We keep referring about smart pricing systems. The technology doesn't exist for that. It can't be done at the moment. So we need to be mindful. I think I'm not against the idea. I think it's a very interesting idea, but we simply can't deliver it at the moment. And until then, we need to sort out our TfL funding and make sure that we have the resources to do it. But everyone should have access to transport. And I'm very pleased that all stations on Crossrail will have disabled access and have step-free access. Thank you.
Thanks, Onka. Gregory.
Thank you very much. Yes, I agree with what everyone else has said. Of course, we must make as many of these stations step-free access as possible. I know that Ickenham station is on the list of the mayor's Transport for London for very shortly. Also, I'm a Hanger Hill councillor in Ealing, and we have a number of tube stations in or on the borders of my ward. And I know that I've lobbied the mayor very hard, and we have got confirmation that North Ealing, Hanger Lane, and Park Royal will all be going step-free access. So I've personally lobbied very hard on this, and I've had achievement, and I will continue to do that across Ealing and Hillingdon. I think the one thing I would say is that, we can talk a good game, but the reality is one of the biggest shifts to get people onto public transport will be Crossrail. And unfortunately, that has been delayed and delayed and delayed. And I think, unless we get Crossrail sorted, we are not going to make any major improvements in getting people to use public transport for their long journeys. And of course, those are all step-free access that need to be brought online as soon as possible.
Thank you very much. I've just had a note on time come through to me, and so what I'm going to try and do is ask a question or two that hopefully are a bit more like yes, no. You might want to give a bit more flesh to the bones than that, but trying to that don't need. They're asking, will you do certain things? So the first of these is, will you publish a publicly, and I suppose for you, Reid, would you push for this if it's not within your capacity as a GLA member, but might be a local council issue, so on and so forth? Will you publish a publicly easily available breakdown of how our recycling is dealt with? And we're back to Hussein to begin with.
Yes, and we're doing it at the moment because we think Ealing is way behind targets. If we look at Lib Dem led boroughs, they do very well in recycling, and our councillors have actually asked for the statistics, and they're still waiting for them. So yes, definitely.
Thank you very much, and thank you for being concise.
Is it me? Can't hear you, but yeah, I'll go.
Oh, I was on mute. Apologies. Maureen, sorry.
Yes, 100%. We have some kind of weird recycling postcode lottery right now that actually Caroline Russell has already been investigating, and it's absolutely, you have no idea what you can and cannot recycle. It depends which borough you're in. Everybody's sort of making it up as they go. I remember when I was working in Hammersmith, I asked about recycling. They said, yeah, no, we recycle, we burn it. I'm like, that is definitely not recycling. So yes, oh my God, yes, transparency, and let's make a plan, 100%.
Thank you, and thank you again. I don't know, I was probably on mute when I thanked Hussein for his answer and for being concise. But thank you too. Onka.
Yes.
Okay, there we go. That was concise. But brilliant. I almost expect you to say more. Well,
Gregory, you said you wanted to concise.
That's excellent. That works for me. Gregory.
Yes, absolutely. I think people need to know, one, how to collect, what recycling can be collected, and two, more importantly, how it's disposed of and how much of it is actually recycled. And I mean, I don't want to defend Labour ever in a meeting like this, but to give Hussein's been slightly over exaggeration. Recycling rates in Ealing have gone down, certainly, but they're not way below target. So I'll give Labour something back. They are down, but they're not way below.
Go. Thank you, Gregory and Anthony.
Missed targets are missed targets. If we have them, we have to keep them.
Yeah, the whole principle of reform actually is to make things more simple. And I just don't understand why recycling is so complicated. So yes, whatever we can do to make it easier for people to be green in their lives and lower carbon emissions, we will do everything we can.
Wonderful. Thank you for those concise answers. I've got another one that I hope you'll be able to be as equally concise on, which is to reduce pollution and save energy. Would you press local authorities to switch off all unnecessary street security and building lighting after midnight? And we begin this round with Maureen.
Yes, 100%. And I'm glad you brought up lighting, because lighting is a massive environmental issue. Lighting pollution is destroying our wildlife's routine, especially wildlife that's mostly active at night. So yeah, we need to change. We need to make sure we don't have white light anymore. It needs to be different colors, yellow, that doesn't affect. And yes, unnecessary light needs to be switched off. Obviously, we need to have spaces where people can walk safely with light, so we need to work with the communities to make sure we have safe places for them to walk. But yes, unnecessary light, switch it off.
Thank you. Anke.
Well, I certainly think, look, that one is look at the impact, make sure the streets are safe, make sure that streets are secure. And of course, if it can be done, it should be done. But I'm not going to give a blanket answer and say that I'm in favor of everything being switched off after midnight, because I think it's going to be looked at in the local context and what's important for local communities. And I think the best place to make the judgments are local authority on that matter, and not a matter for the GLA.
Thank you. Gregory.
Well, I think no one would argue that people should keep unnecessary lights on. I mean, that's clearly an environmental and indeed an economic no-brainer for a council. But I think the concern I would have is whose definition of unnecessary. Ealing Council currently at the moment dims the lights down at various points in the evening, and it's one of the biggest things that comes through in my inbox, especially from women walking home late at night feeling unsafe. So for my purposes, I think the safety of people going about their business, I'm afraid, trumps on this one. What I would say is anyone who's walked past Percival House, which is the Ealing Council offices, at any point during the night, even during this time of COVID, and sees it illuminated like a Christmas tree, would suggest that at 2 a.m. in the morning, there probably aren't that many people working there, and perhaps they should turn the lights off. Local authorities need to accept the example with their own buildings first.
Thank you. Anthony.
I was doing a run through Regent's Park up through Primrose Hill the other day, training for my marathon, and it was 12 o'clock, 12:30 midday, and the lights were on. So it infuriated me. So what I'm saying is that technology is going to be the answer to our ecological problems, and smart cities and the way that we operate them means that we should have a situation where lights are, when they're not being used and not useful, and there's not a safety issue, they go off. And when there is a safety issue and when they are needed, they go on. And so reform would all be about bringing in smart cities and the technology which is going to reduce carbon emissions as soon as possible.
Thank you. Hussein.
If it's unnecessary, we don't need it. So full stop. So again, what we're having a look at, when it comes to street lighting, yes, safety is paramount. We have to make sure that people are safe when they're using our roads. Where office blocks are concerned and buildings, it's easily solved. Sensors, have them in there. When no one's around, they switch off. Most definitely saves money, saves pollution. And then light pollution as well. One of the Lib Dem policies is to rewild and green London. So we want to encourage wildlife, so we don't want to have this excessive light pollution.
Thank you very much. That's great. Our next, there's two questions around Warren Farm, and they're both quite long questions. But essentially, if you became the next London Assembly representative, would you support the campaign to save Warren Farm and help gain commitments from the Mayor of London, Ealing Council, to give Warren Farm 65 acres a nature reserve designation? And we begin with Onka.
Hi. Well, look, the Warren Farm is something which is very close to my heart and something which I know very much about. I know this has a checkered history in terms of its planning or what the council wanted to achieve for it. But I think now we are in a position to relook at it again. And I think this is that the local authority has I'll review the situation, but I certainly would want it to be enjoyed by the local people, local environment, and fight for that corner. But I know that also there was an opportunity beforehand to get QPR to come there, and I think there was a lot of controversy about that. But that was also a useful use of resources. But if we can make a environmental issue, if we can make it much more friendly and useful by the community, I'll be happy to support that. Thanks.
Thank you. Gregory.
Yes, absolutely. I'm 100% in agreement with this. I've been championing the idea of having Warren Farm as a nature reserve for many, many years. And I think that the work that Hanwell Nature has done on Warren Farm, I think they've raised somewhere in the region of £90,000 to fund legal actions against that being sold off. I think is fantastic, and I would do everything in my power to do that. I know that Sean Bailey, our mayoral candidate, is visiting Warren Farm tomorrow to meet with members of Hanwell Nature, and I'll be there as well. And he and I have a complete pledge that Warren Farm should become a nature reserve and be for no other purpose.
Thank you. Anthony.
I will declare that I don't have an intimate knowledge of what's going on with Warren Farm itself, but that a nature reserve in principle would be the kind of thing that, particularly if it supports local environmental jobs, would be something that we'd be petitioning the mayor to implement.
Thank you. Hussein.
So you're going to miss me out for a second. But so establishment of a nature reserve has been a long-standing Lib Dem policy in Ealing. We're amongst the first to call for it. We've worked with a number of organisations such as Hanwell Nature and Brent River Canal Society to try and bring it about. It's a unique opportunity to establish a nature reserve of this kind in London because there's a multitude of red listed flora and fauna there. So it also goes towards cutting the council's, going towards the climate emergency objectives for the council. And that was actually a declaration from the Lib Dems in Ealing Council to have a climate emergency. We've also asked the question, our councillors, Lib Dem councillors in Ealing, at a full cabinet meeting, we got a commitment from the cabinet member for environment to work with the Brent River Canal Society and other interested parties to develop the proposal. So yeah, we're on it and we're definitely backing it.
Thank you. And Maureen.
Yes, of course. I mean, it's obviously for us, it's a no-brainer. And what I love about Warren Farm is that it's such a community story. It's really where community has triumphed, and everyone who's worked on Warren Farm, so many different individuals, so many different residents groups. It's just a wonderful story, especially because the proposal was so awful. So well done. I would go a bit further, because what we're seeing now is that other areas which have the nature reserve designation are actually seeing things happen to them. An area in Wormwood Scrubs, for example, is a nature reserve, and yet HS2 are destroying it. So I would also push for much stronger protections for nature reserves, that they are completely untouchable, and also much better training for local council workers who work in our green spaces, that they have ecological awareness and that they know what sort of things to do, and especially what not to do in our green spaces. But yes, 100% nature reserve designation for Warren Farm. Yes, please.
Thank you. We are coming into our final question from the list, and then we're going to move to our I'll allow you to give your final 2-minute statement. And the final question, we'll be beginning with Gregory, is are you committed to fighting for affordable, green and high quality social housing?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think all housing that should be built in the capital needs to have green, it needs to be carbon neutral. And that will include incentivization for proper insulation, which obviously has an environmental impact, but also has a social impact and an economic impact on those people who are living in it, in those properties. And I think, as I've said earlier on, the most environmentally friendly properties are those that are low rise, that are family-sized dwellings, and that have some form of individual outside space. And whether that's not possible in developments that they have, communal outside space. And it's something that I've been pushing for really hard as a councillor, and as a GLA member, it would be one of my key priorities, because we're going to have to build new housing, but we need to build housing that's environmentally friendly, suitable for families, and that will last the test of time, which unfortunately I think that the properties that are being built at the moment, the skyscrapers that are being built at the moment, simply don't do.
Thank you. Same question to you, Anthony.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult not to agree with the question itself, insofar as Gregory's answered it. Really, why wouldn't you want housing to be built again using good tech in an environmentally sustainable way? And I was watching a Bloomberg program yesterday, and what they're doing in New York with converting and rebuilding old or refitting old buildings to ensure that they are much lower carbon emission or carbon neutral. And of course, there is a cost issue, of course, connected with all of this, but it's absolutely essential that we weigh that up, and that everybody is looked after and housed in a way that is going to be sustainable for our children and our children's children.
Thank you. Hussein.
Thanks. So what the Lib Dems want to do is set up a London housing company and take control of actually delivering the homes we need directly. So reinvest those profits back into genuinely affordable homes. So our City Hall backed developer will be a new player and will actually shape the market. So bringing in empty homes, there's so many empty homes, and offices back into use, maximizing the use of public land, driving forward an affordable homes program, raising its own revenue to build out sites on its own. So no more desperate deals with developers, actually take control of it. What we want to do, there's going to be a shift. People are going to have flexible working. There's going to be more empty office spaces. We want to convert this office space into quality, affordable, zero carbon homes. So we've got a plan for it. Vote Lib Dem.
Thank you. Maureen.
Yes, So I think, well, my favourite policy is when Sean Berry becomes mayor, one of the things she wants to do is set up a People's Land Commission. And that's really exciting because it means that the residents in the area, or if it's social housing project, then they have a direct say about that development. So that's really exciting. Another thing that we need to address, if as a London Assembly member, I would really push for a proper redefinition of what is affordable housing, because what's considered affordable housing at the moment, I sure as hell can't afford it. And I don't think I ever will. So I don't call that affordable housing. We need to be really smart about how we're going to build new houses. Yes, we can't have high rise because that's not energy and carbon efficient, but we can have lower high rise, so 3-4 stories. That is the most efficient way. We need to make sure there's enough space, and we need to make sure that there is enough green space. We would never build on metropolitan open land and green belt.
You've
yeah,
had a minute.
I mean, lots more to say, but yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Marijn, and Onka, over to you.
Great, thank you. Look, of course, we want to build houses which are greener and more environmentally friendly. We also have a commitment not to build on the green belt, as the Mayor of London has ruled that out. But we do need to build houses, and I think the key words there was socially affordable housing. We've had dodgy definitions of social housing before Steve became the mayor, and now we say, look, it should be about 1/3 of the income, every income for that neighborhood. So we want to build houses, and also we want to make sure houses that people can afford it. I mean, previous 10 years, we've had houses being built which are brick investments for overseas investors, right? And we want houses for Londoners, which they can afford to live in, but provided that we give them in a green-friendly way, and also make sure that we have insulation and a retrofitting of our old houses. But so the answer to this question, of course, we want to build houses, but it's about squaring that thing up, right, of how we build, make them affordable at the same time, but make sure that they are affordable, and that they are green, and that they are to the best technology. So that's what we will do. And the mayor has already committed to setting up a GLA as a building organization themselves. So that's already in the Labour manifesto. We'll be doing that.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm gonna thank you all now. We said that we would finish. We're aiming to finish at 8:30. I know that some of the panelists have other meetings they need to be in, and I'm sure that those of you who are watching that I can't see are probably also have kind of had your head filled with information, and I hope that it's been useful. I'm really grateful to Friends of the Earth for organising this event. It has been recorded, and the recording will become available on the Friends of the Earth website in the next few days. That's both Ealing and Hillingdon, and I'm hoping that I speak on. I'm not representative of them. I'm quite independent, but hopefully some sort of link will be sent out to those who have registered for today, so they'll be able to watch. I was also asked to remind about voting for the London Assembly, because there are 3 different parts to the ballot paper, I believe. So you get 3 votes. 1 for the London Mayor, which is your pink ballot paper. Number 2, it's for the London Assembly constituency member, which are those you've met this evening. And then number 3, the London Assembly London-wide members election, which is an orange ballot paper. So you'll have those 3 to vote in, and of course to remind you to vote and to make it to the polling station on the voting day. I've just double checked my notes. There we go. I think that's everything that I needed to say, but wanted to thank all the candidates for taking the time this evening. I'll thank particularly Tony and Deborah, who have organised this on behalf of Friends of the Earth. I know they've put a lot of their own time into this, and we're going to conclude with 2-minute outgoing statements from each of the candidates in reverse order from those that we began with. and so it will run in the opposite direction than we have done for the rest of the evening. And so we'll begin with Anthony, go to Gregory, Onka, Mahraim, and then finishing with Hussein. So Anthony, over to you. You've got 2 minutes.
Okay, and I'm not sure that I'm going to need all that, because the whole point of reform is that we're going to change politics. And the reason I came into the party was because I felt that the two major parties were mismanaging and misinterpreting what people want. I think we've got as good a credentials as anybody on this panel to work for London and work for Ealing and Hillingdon. My credentials are that I've had a business in Uxbridge now for 10 years. And I believe that it's small businesses that are going to get London back on its feet. Tying that in with the theme of the evening, which is the environment. This is the most important discussion that we will have in politics. And so thank you very much for the invitation to be here this evening to discuss it. But I'm not going to give you lists, reams and reams of promises and policies that we're going to implement, because that's what everybody else always does. What I'm going to say is we're going to come in and we're going to change things for the benefit of everyone, not a certain group of people, not a certain section of society, not anybody that doesn't deserve the kind of support that they need from their government. Everyone's going to get equal treatment from reform. We're going to reform the way that everything is done, and for that reason, I'm not going to name all the tube stations in Ealing and Hillingdon. I'm not going to tell you demonstrate my huge knowledge of the green belt and the green policies. But what I am going to say is that we are capable. There's a groundswell of opinion in this country now that is fed up with the two major parties. And we're going to tap into that, and we're going to make a huge difference. So reform is for the future.
Thank you, Anthony. And because we're going in the reverse order, and I've got to remember this, and we're going to Gregory next.
Well, first of all, thank you all very much for inviting me again. I think it's been an absolutely fascinating evening, and I've really enjoyed it from my point of view. So thank you to Friends of the Earth for putting it together. Thank you also for sending me the London plan, which I have managed to skim through whilst we've been sitting here. And yes, I do sign up to it. So that's the breaking news. I do sign up to that pledge. I think it's excellent. All I would really say is that what we need in Ealing and Hillingdon is somebody who is going to stand up to whoever the mayor is going to be on the 7th or the 8th of May, whenever the announcement is made. We need somebody who is willing to ask the questions. Now, as I've said in this evening, I have spoken up against my own party on HS2 and on Heathrow. So I'm not fearful of standing up to whoever the mayor is, of whatever party they're from. And that's my commitment to you. Yes, I want clean air by making the bus fleet completely green. Yes, I want to protect our green spaces and green belt by making sure there's absolutely no building on them. And yes, I want to harness the technologies and the jobs that will come out of a green economy. But what matters most, I think, to Ealing and Hillingdon is someone who could be passionate, somebody who can be a champion for our two boroughs, and someone who is going to hold the mayor to account. And I hope this evening that you've seen that I could do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Gregory. Onka, over to you.
Well, thank you. First of all, I want to thank the Friends of the Earth for organising this Hustings and giving us an opportunity to meet you and other people through you. In terms of passion, I started my school career at Million Drive Primary School in Hillingdon, and then moved to Southall, where I still live, and then to Sheffield Medical School, and then back to Southall, where I work as a GP. I've worked for GP for 30 years, and I got in politics, not because I'm a career politician, not because I needed to make the money, because I make better money as a doctor than as a GLA member, but because I passionately cared for the NHS, and I cared for the fact when the Tories wanted to close 4 A&E departments in West London. So I came there out of passion. My children live there. My children are brought up there. So I'm committed to the area. And you want an assembly member who delivers something. Asking questions is the option. So you want someone who delivers something. And this is a two-horse race. Other members won't like it, but the reality is the mayor of London will either be a Labour mayor or a Tory mayor. None of the other candidates have any real chance of becoming a mayor of London. And so this is a two-horse race, and you really need to make sure who is the right person for you to deliver for what Ealing and Hillingdon wants. And let's look what Sadiq Khan has done. He, over the 5 years, has worked tirelessly for London, improved the equality by 1/3, committed to reducing London to zero carbon by 2030, and has been tough on crime and all the causes of crime also, and has invested money of London Assembly in putting up the police numbers. In contrast, the Tory candidate has been lying to Londoners about the police funding, but TfL finances, council tax, and he doesn't share the London's values and diversity. He said multiculturalism would turn London into a crime-riddled cesspool, and that's accommodating and that accommodating Muslims and Hindus robs Britain of his community. That's the sort of person values that Sean Bailey had. He doesn't share London's values on women's rights. He said teenage girls choose to get pregnant as a career choice, and that good-looking women in deprived areas tend to have been around, and that teachers showed more discipline when he was growing up because the men were well. So that's the sort of candidate choice you have, right? And the choice you make on the 6th of May is that the people of London vote wisely.
Thank you, Onkar. You had your time. I can see Gregory shaking his head. I'm gonna go over to Maureen. You've got your 2 minutes.
Thank you. Okay, so yes, vote Green because others have tried and failed, not failed completely. Some good things have happened, but we are now at a point where we need to start taking this seriously and we need real action. The Green Party has a plan. We have a really good plan. We have ways of getting budgets for things that other people are like, there's no way you can afford it. We're going to ask for funds paid by London drivers to be given to London, and then we can pay for a whole bunch of stuff that's going to be much more environmentally friendly. There's so many creative ideas that we have. Give us the chance to implement these ideas. You will love them. Read the manifesto. I really highly recommend it. We are the party that puts planet and people over profit and power. And that's really important to remember because there aren't that many people like us. So please, and also, my pet peeve is this is proportional representation, this election. So you can vote for the party that you truly want to be in power. You don't have to worry about technical voting. You can vote Green and your votes will go to the Green Party. We can have a Green mayor. We can have more Green assembly members. So vote Green and give us a chance to get to work. We're ready. We're more than capable. So please, let's do it. Let's do it together. Thank you.
Thanks, Maureen. And over to you, Hussein.
Well, thank you for hosting this today and Friends of the Earth for organising it on such a vital and important issue that affects all of us. So I'm a Londoner. I grew up in London. I've got family in both Ealing and Hillingdon. I'm very passionate about the area, and I can stand up to the mayor and actually hold them accountable. The reason we haven't is because they're from the same party all the time. It's time to vote differently. It's not a two-horse race. You have to, the old politics just clearly doesn't work. We need a new way of thinking. We need a fresh start for everything. We've got one assembly member at the moment, Caroline Pigeon. Please look at her record. See what one Lib Dem assembly member can do. Let's put some more in there. We can really make a key difference to London. London's got to play its part in tackling the global climate emergency. We're uniquely placed. It's things like buildings and transports that are massive contributors to pollution. What can we do? Everyone's talking about our lack of funds, this and that. Well, Lib Dems are the only ones who actually costed this. We've got an answer. Scrap the polluting Silvertown tunnel. You'll get £2 billion to invest in clean, green public transport. We're going to support more cycling, more walking, greening the bus fleets. As you've heard, accessible transport, a fairer pay-as-you-go system for pricing. We want to rewild London, make it green, make it the leader, the leading city, which is green. So if you really want to make a difference, vote Liberal Democrats on all 3 ballot papers. If you really want to take London forward, we've got the plans, we've got the determination, the knowledge and the skills to make it happen. Please vote Liberal Democrat.
Thank you, Hussein, and thank you to all of you for your time this evening, and to all of those who have been watching, all the best as you make your decision and vote. Is it next week? Someone tell me I've lost track of what date. It's next week. So there we go. Vote on the 6th. There we go. Vote next week. Make sure you know where your local polling station is if you're not doing it by postal vote. Thank you all very much. I think the recording will stop now, and